The last time we drove the IONIQ 5, we took it to India's hottest border in Rajasthan in the peak summers when temperatures were hitting a scorching 50 degrees Celsius. And we are now heading to India's coldest border with the IONIQ 5 at the Siachen border, where temperatures can dip below minus 50 degrees Celsius during the winters. I'm starting from the outskirts of Srinagar and heading to Siachen via Kargil and Leh, driving the IONIQ 5 across some of the highest motorable roads in the world.
Given how cold it gets at Siachen during the winters, bone chilling sounds like an understatement. In fact, given the extreme cold and the inhospitable conditions, Siachen and most of Ladakh is inaccessible during the winters. But thankfully that's not the case at the moment, and I'm really hoping that Ladakh will look absolutely stunning right now.
The good news though is that roads are smooth, which means I will be able to make rapid progress and maintain consistent speeds with a light foot, passing some of the popular tourist spots in Kashmir like Sonmarg and the mighty Zojila Pass before crossing over into the Union Territory of Ladakh.
We're at Zojila right now, our first mountain pass on this trip, and I'm at 11,649 feet above sea level. And as I cross over and start descending on the other side, I will be going towards Kargil via Dras. And the good news is that unlike internal combustion engines, the IONIQ 5 is not experiencing any loss in performance.
The biggest reason why petrol and diesel engines lose power at high altitudes is because there is a lack of oxygen as you go higher. And that means you need to work the engine harder to make progress, given the drop in performance, which in turn bumps up the exhaust emissions too. That's not the case with the IONIQ 5 though, because this is a battery electric vehicle. So losses in performance are zero, and more importantly, tailpipe emissions are zero. We then descended down to cross Dras, the coldest place in India and the second coldest inhabited place in the world. The good news is driving downhill from Zojila meant I was able to recover some of the charge consumed while climbing up, thanks to the IONIQ 5's strong regen. Hyundai has equipped the IONIQ 5 with 3 regen modes besides a single pedal driving mode called I-pedal, where regenerative braking is the strongest. It's the best bet for driving long distances, and in my case was a boon, as recovering energy was a quick affair when going downhill.
We're just crossing the city of Kargil right now, and I still have 58% charge left despite driving for 200 kilometers since morning. Now that's thanks to how energy efficient the IONIQ 5's electric powertrain is, how good the energy regeneration on this car is, and also the fact that we have descended down from Zojila because Kargil sits at just about 8,700 feet and the regen has been quite strong. But we begin climbing very soon after this because we are now heading towards Lamayuru, which sits at 11,000 feet.
Crossing Lamayuru was not a challenge, and I have to say the IONIQ 5's powertrain is very efficient when it comes to regaining energy through regenerative braking. I was thus also able to use the air conditioning if and when needed without having to worry about draining the battery quickly. I guess that's also one of the advantages of having a 72.6 kWh battery pack. On another note, Leh sits just 400 feet above Lamayuru, which meant I was not going to consume too much charge going forward, as I would not be climbing any more steep inclines. What's noteworthy here is that the IONIQ 5 is packaged really well as a fully electric premium SUV, and I'm not referring to just the battery pack or the regen modes. It looks futuristic from end to end and was grabbing a lot of attention on the road. The design of the front end and distinctive looking headlamps help the IONIQ 5 stand out, as do its 20-inch alloy wheels and the tail lamp design. But guess what? Besides turning heads with its design, the IONIQ 5 was also raising eyebrows once onlookers noticed the green number plates. That's because not too many people expect someone to be driving an electric car in some of the remotest parts of the country, and also at some of the highest altitudes possible. The IONIQ 5's interiors also impress, especially with their spaciousness, futuristic design and practicality. A single glass slab houses the high-resolution displays for the instrument cluster and infotainment screen, while the steering wheel uses a unique design. The IONIQ 5 is also high on features, and you get electric adjust for both front seats and also recline and slide functions for the rear seats. You also get ventilated front seats along with heated rear seats, which adds to convenience. Besides multiple USB ports at the front and rear, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connectivity, a panoramic sunroof with a unique central opening, Hyundai's BlueLink connected technology, Level 2 ADAS and 6 airbags.
I can see the city of Leh in front of me and I still have 16% charge left. So that means I have effectively made it from Srinagar to Leh on a single charge. And that's been made possible thanks to how energy efficient the powertrain in the IONIQ 5 is. But the bigger star of the show to me has been how quick and how strong the energy recuperation in this electric vehicle is. Well, but before I call it a day now, it's time to get the car charged so I can climb up to Khardungla and go onwards towards Siachen tomorrow morning.
Leh has a couple of charging stations, but more importantly, the Hyundai dealership in the city is equipped with a 7.2 kilowatt charger. And that proved to be extremely convenient and helpful as I simply drove in, plugged the charger and heaved a sigh of relief, knowing that the battery pack will be charged fully overnight.
Okay, so we're now headed towards Khardungla, one of the highest motorable roads in the world and a route that has some very steep inclines. Now, fact is I've driven to Khardungla several times before, but never in an electric vehicle. So it is going to be an interesting experience today.
The roads leading up to Khardungla used to be non-existent, but the BRO or Border Roads Organization has worked very hard over the years, and today the drive up to Khardungla, which is almost at 18,000 feet above sea level, is a piece of cake. The IONIQ 5 complements the hill climb well too, as it is based on Hyundai's eGMP platform and does not just look sporty, but the IONIQ 5 is also engaging from behind the wheel. And given that electric powertrains are unaffected by high altitudes, the IONIQ 5's outputs of 217 PS and 350 Newton meters make it an excellent set of wheels in the mountain twisties.
We've just achieved our first major milestone on this trip, which is getting to Khardungla. Now, this used to be the world's highest motorable road until a couple of years ago when Umlingla came up. We are well above 17,000 feet above sea level, and we've covered over and climbed over 5,000 feet in the last 40 kilometers when we started from Leh this morning. And this is huge because every internal combustion engine vehicle that comes up here is left gasping for air given the altitude and the lack of oxygen, but not the IONIQ 5.
The other side of Khardungla is a steep downhill section towards Siachen, and this is where the energy recovery of an EV like the IONIQ 5 is a massive advantage. The range at Khardungla top was 383 kilometers, but within the next 5 kilometers, I had recovered over 20 kilometers worth of range thanks to the IONIQ 5's strong region.
Like I mentioned before, the BRO is responsible and does a stellar job of maintaining the roads in these parts of the country. Well, that's important because landslides are an everyday occurrence here. But the BRO is always hard at work repairing and maintaining the roads, and in fact, most of the route from Leh to Siachen is smooth tarmac today, something that was a dream until a few years ago.
One of the concerns with EVs is their ground clearance, but the IONIQ 5's ground clearance, even when fully loaded, is 163 millimeters. And that means I did not have to worry at all even when the roads were broken. On the same note, the IONIQ 5 runs on 20-inch wheels shod with 255 section tires that have an aspect ratio of just 45. But the ride quality is excellent thanks to its well-tuned suspension, and comfort is excellent even on broken roads, besides which the tires were holding up really well too.
We're in the Nubra Valley right now, which is one of the most picturesque parts of Ladakh, as it is virtually untouched and pristine and is home to only a few small villages before Siachen. And this is Ladakh at its prettiest.
The land was also flat throughout Nubra Valley, which meant the IONIQ 5 was not spending more energy than needed as I drove towards the Siachen Base Camp, which is also the world's highest battlefield as it sits at over 12,000 feet above sea level. I could not help but think of how our soldiers braved the extreme cold and inhospitable conditions there to protect the nation. As for me, I was now minutes away from creating history, as the IONIQ 5 would become the first electric vehicle to conquer India's hottest and coldest borders both. This is a huge testament to the IONIQ 5's solid engineering as an electric vehicle that had braved some of the toughest possible conditions in the world, and not just in India.
This is it! We've made it to India's coldest border with the IONIQ 5. Now, this trip has been unlike any other, and in fact it's been a lot more challenging than driving the IONIQ 5 to India's hottest border in peak summers because this time I've had to make some wild calculations given the cold weather, the steep inclines, the changes in terrain, and of course the lack of roads. Well, it's been crazy, but the IONIQ 5 has shined bright with its consistent performance, the comfort, and above all else, how energy efficient its electric powertrain has been. The energy regeneration has been phenomenal throughout, and especially today because I started off from Leh with 100% charge but ended up using almost 25% charge in the 40 kilometers that I climbed up to Khardungla. But then, descending into the Nubra Valley, I recovered almost 10% of charge and more than 40 kilometers worth of range. Overall, this has been phenomenal in terms of the experience, and the best thing is that even 200 kilometers later, I still have more than 50% of charge left, so I can make it back to Leh without having to worry about recharging the batteries on the way. I've done Srinagar to Leh in a single charge and then Leh to Siachen and back to Leh in a single charge as well. So this one is certainly for the record books.